So we're finally getting back to the Moebius model's Riddler, and I've been delaying this for quite a while because I've been practicing new flesh recipes and really wasn't happy with what I was coming up with. I think I tried about 3 different ones, finally had to strip the miniature and finally try again. I decided to kind of mix up what I was learning with, what I can figure out on my own. So we started off with a base of Vallejo model color beige red mixed with some model color red leather. And now over that I am dry brushing a mix of basic skin tone and red leather. Starting off with the dry brush just to get the paint in the areas where we need it, and then later as we go on we'll smooth all this out. For the next step, just added a little bit more of our basic skin tone and continuing with the dry brushing. This method I'm using is kind of similar to the one that I used, what was the last one I did now? The penguin, I believe. Followed that from a video online that I found, but I made slight adjustments in regards to the colors used because I didn't remember what I used last time. Now I have the same mixture as before, but I've thinned it extremely thin. I've used a mixture of flow aid and water. The flow aid slows down the drying time and allows us to wet blend the color in a little bit better. So if I put too much on an area, I can just blend the excess away, and it gets a long working time. So this layer, we're starting to smooth out all the roughness from the dry brushing. I've now added some Panzer Ace's highlight flesh to our mixture and proceeding to apply the highlights. Have to make sure that the previous layer is dry. It does take a while because of the flow aid, but the process is the same, just increasing the highlights as we would on any normal miniature. One thing that tricks me is, you can see here I'm painting everything from the face on. Make sure to turn your figure as you go. With these larger heads, it's very important to view them from every angle, because I caught myself on this one, but sometimes on a large piece like this, I forget to turn it to the side and highlight from the side, because I mainly concentrate on the face area when I'm painting a much smaller scale miniature. And here's just a quick shot of our progress so far, give you a better view of how we're doing. We're going to jump to the shade now. We're not necessarily done with the highlights, but on a large piece like this, you can go back and forth between the shade and the highlights, making sure everything's balanced. For the shade, we have going back to our beige red, our red leather, and now adding some burnt umber to the mix. Once again, this is very, very thin, so we apply it and then smooth it out, blend it in, and slowly, very slowly build up our colors. So far, I've been roughly following a painting guide from a book I recently picked up. I think it's called Painting Skin and Flesh Tones by AK Interactive, and they recommended the burnt umber for the shade. However, I decided I didn't like that. I wanted a little bit more warmth to the shade areas, so actually I went over everything I just did with the burnt umber, and instead I took out the burnt umber and added flat brown, which has a bit more red tone to it. So we got red leather, beige red, and flat brown is the mix right now. Another shade layer applied now with more of the flat brown added, and I'm slowly working my way to the proper color here. Some of these steps you can skip, but I don't want to go too extreme and then having things too dark. One of the things you have to remember when painting different scale items, the smaller the scale, the more contrast you need, or the reverse is true. The larger the scale, the less contrast. So I'm not too familiar with these 1/8 scale figures. I'm not sure what exactly is a good ratio for the contrast. So I'm working my way up slowly, or down in this case in the shade colors, until I get to the proper tone. I decided my base layer was a little too dark, so I decided to go back with just straight basic skin tone and apply some very, very thin highlights here and there. And that's one thing I've been doing back and forth on this project that I don't show on camera, is going back to the base coat and reapplying it, adjusting the colors. Since we have such a large canvas here with this face, we have plenty of area to work in. Go back to the base coat, then reapply a highlight, and then do a shade, and back to the base coat, making adjustments here and there as necessary. We're about done with the face now, so I need to add a little bit of color to it. To the cheeks, I am adding a mixture of flat red with a small amount of dark Prussian blue added. And once again, as always, this color is very thin, just applying a very small amount and then using a wet brush to blend it in and blend away any excess. I also applied the same color to the ears as well, since your ears tend to be a little bit more red than your face, because I think it's with the blood flowing through or the thinness of them. So I applied a little bit to the lobes as well. Let's take a break from the face and work on the hair. Frank Gorshin's hair reportedly was blonde. However, in the TV show, he normally had it slicked back, and it looked much darker than blonde would be. So I decided to go with actually flat brown as the base coat for the hair. And for the first highlight, I've added some golden brown to that flat brown, and proceeding to do kind of a, not a dry brush, but using the edge of the brush to pick all the edges of the hair out. And this color was applied about 2 or 3 times. To the flat brown and golden brown, I have now added green ochre, and just proceeding to do the same as I did before, as always with highlighting, working on a bit of a smaller area now. I'm also using more of the tip of the brush, trying to pick out the hairs, mostly on the top of his head, a little bit as it curves down, but we're beginning to add the higher highlights at this point. After a couple coats of that highlight, now we're going to add a little bit of shade. I have a thin mixture here of our original flat brown, some model color military green, and we're bringing back the dark Prussian blue as well. And kind of like I did with the highlights, now I'm trying to apply this in the recessed areas. Don't want to overdo it too much, because with the hair slicked back, we're not going to get a whole amount of contrast. Also applying a few thicker layers around the domino mask as well. For the eyes, we started off with camo black brown. That's just to get the ring around the eye, and then the actual white of the eye is pale sand. After that, we put a little drop of black, use that as an outline, and then, sorry, I'm off camera right now because painting eyes is hard, using a drop of, what was it, Game Color Steel Gray. Frank Gorshin had very light blue or like steel gray eyes. The second color for our eye is model color Oxford Blue. So we have 2 colors in the iris, so we have a little bit of depth happening, a little bit of highlight. And then we finish off, first putting a drop of white in the upper left-hand corner, and then over that, a drop of black in the center, and then a little bit of flat red in the corners of each eye. And I do have them pointing down, so that hopefully will decrease the O-face problem that this figure has. For the tongue, we are using a mix of beige red mixed with flat red. And I just kind of thought of these 2 colors. It worked out pretty well, actually. And to highlight it, just added a little bit more of the beige red. And I ended up using the exact same color on the lips as well, but I added a little bit of flat brown to it. And there we go, we are done with our Riddler. The face came out better than I expected it to. The problem I realize I have with these kits and painting larger scale faces, I don't do it enough. These are the only figures that I'm painting at this large scale, and I do one of these every 6 months or so, and by the time I do the next one, I've already forgotten what I did on the last one, so that's a problem with working in too many genres. Other things to point out, the mask, before anyone says it, the mask is supposed to be purple, but he doesn't wear the mask with the suit. That's an issue that I brought up way at the beginning with this kit. So I decided to paint it green because it better matches the colors used on the suit. Also, the base kind of sucks. Base forms a big bat symbol once you get all the figures together, but because the Riddler here is in the back row, he has that ugly flat section in the front of his base. So if you're planning on buying this as a single individual figure, you're probably going to want to build your own base, or get a wood base or something like that for it. Other than that, pretty decent. A little silvering on the decals. Should have gone with the stencils instead, but hey, what are you gonna do? So that's it for the Riddler. I think we got 3 more to do. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.
And the crowd goes wild.
Yay!